What up, everybody? Welcome to a playoff edition of That's OD. I'm Ohm. There's our dude, Dave McMenamin. Dave, we finally are in the playoffs, the best time of the year. Clippers are going to face the Suns. Lakers survived the play-in to face Memphis. Let's go, Dave. We're finally here this weekend. Dave, first, let's take me back to the play-in, man, because that was an interesting game. I mean, it was ugly. Minnesota had control of it. They kind of gave it away in the fourth. We had a little brilliance from LeBron at the end there. The Dennis Schroeder overtime was nasty. Anthony Davis's foul on Mike Conley. What did you make of the Lakers, of how they got to Memphis and how they were able to survive that game?
I mean, it's the type of game that makes your eyes bleed. The Lakers, it's not that they had no business winning it, because they played really good defense in the second half, in particular in the fourth quarter. But even their execution, once they made that push to come back from 15 points, was severely lacking. Well, LeBron James had a few atypical turnovers. LeBron in the first half, you look at some of those clips, he was barely making a contest on some of the Wolves shooters, and the Wolves as a team were very hot in the first half. Karl-Anthony Towns didn't miss a shot. Mike Conley didn't miss a shot. And it almost ended up being one of the worst moments in Laker playoff basketball history, with Anthony Davis getting called for that foul on Mike Conley after Dennis Schroeder makes the beautiful swish from the corner. Anthony Davis, I went into the locker room after the game, and him and I have a pretty good rapport from working together the last 3-4 years, obviously, me covering him on the team. And so sometimes we'll chat before it's the official media time. I just gave him a look like, are you serious with that foul? And he said, yeah, my brain shut off for 2 seconds. He was so disappointed in himself.
He touched his hand. He touched his hand at the end.
He got his foot, though, man. He got his foot.
Maybe I didn't see that. Yeah.
And he was lucky, under the letter of the law, the referees probably would have been okay to call that a flagrant foul because it was landing area. Obviously, the damage was done just calling a regular 3-point foul anyway. Conley goes 3 for 3. It goes to overtime. But in the overtime, how about Rui Hachimura? Was fantastic, making plays defensively, making shots offensively, and a guy who, of all the new faces that they added around the trade deadline, he's a guy who got a DNP with about 2 weeks left to go in the regular season, had to earn his way back into Darvin Ham's rotation, and he was a trusted player down the stretch in that game. So kudos to him. And LeBron had some big plays. Obviously, he had the 3-point shot to tie it late in the fourth. But he also some turnovers that were really just tough to see out of a guy who's so good at making decisions. And Austin Reeves had some moments. He was really good in the third quarter when the Lakers were making their push. Then again, Austin Reeves was the guy inbounding the pass a couple of possessions before the play where LeBron found Schroeder in the corner. And he throws it away. He totally telegraphed it. The Wolves jumped the passing lane. LeBron has to go foul the guy on the other end. So, very ugly basketball. And I will say that it's not just ugly basketball in a vacuum. Going back to the fourth quarter in Salt Lake City at the end of that 4-game road trip away from Los Angeles, that was a terrible end of the game there. The Lakers didn't play all that well against the Clippers. I know there's mitigating factors, second night of back-to-back, et cetera, but they didn't look all that good against the Clippers. They didn't look good against the Suns B team. They didn't look good against the Jazz B team in the regular season finale. So, thankfully for the Lakers' sake, they were able to earn 5 days off with that win, and they better use it to rest their bodies, rest their minds, and come up with a scheme because, you've seen the Grizzlies, you've covered them in the playoffs. That's a team that can do some damage, and they have to be probably licking their chops ever since last season, losing to the eventual champs in Golden State.
So I was kind of torn picking this series, Dave, and remind me later that I have a bone to pick with fans about our predictions. Okay, definitely bring me back because
sure.
I'm gonna go in on this one. So don't let me forget that. But a couple things. One, yes. There's the absolute potential that the Grizzlies could run the Lakers off the floor. They love to push tempo. They're young. They're athletic. John Morant in the playoffs is a beast, tough to handle. I think we have to see what's going to happen with him this season, because he didn't look quite the same after the whole, like, incident off the court where he kind of had to miss time.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a chemistry issue. I think the team's chemistry is very good. I think they can overcome something like that. They're young, they're tight knit, they're in a city that, they're not going to let a lot of outside things affect them. But what worries me about the Grizzlies when it comes to the Lakers that we saw last year with the Warriors is that they don't have that playoff experience, the know-how to pull out a very tight playoff game. I think we saw that in game 1 against Golden State. John Morant is flying at the rim, and I think Klay Thompson contests, and he misses this shot off the glass, which he says he normally makes 10 out of 12 times, or 12 out of 12, I think he was, but he was flying 100 miles an hour. But basically, you would see as that series would go on, even though John Morant had to miss some time due to injury, that team did not have that championship experience, the playoff experience to win tight games against a team like Golden State that had all the championship experience. And so fast forward to this year, LeBron James and Anthony Davis, I think this is the time of year that playing game was ugly, as you said, but guess what? Guys like Anthony Davis and LeBron James, that is the difference in those type of games. They know how to pull out the end of those type of games. I think we saw that with LeBron at the end there. Yes, Anthony Davis had the bad foul, but I think that's where I give the Lakers a slight edge over Memphis. The one thing I would say, though, Dave, is you brought this up. Do we need to worry about how they've looked as they finish the season here and in this play-in game? Are there warts that are coming out that you think are not going to disappear come playoff time, and they're going to be exposed come playoff time?
I would say this. It is possible to flip a switch and play different when the lights are brighter. When, quite frankly, with this Lakers team, and not necessarily even the entire roster, because there are some young key players they have on their team, but LeBron and Anthony Davis could both use a week's rest. I mean, it's just, they finished the regular season in a sprint, 7 games in their final 12 days. They have 1 day off to rest and prepare for the Wolves, and they're right in the play-in. And so I do think you can see a more spry and energetic group. Execution will still have to be there. Now, of course, Tex Winter, the former longtime assistant of Phil Jackson, liked to say that fatigue makes cowards of us all. And so if you're tired, you're not going to be able to execute at your highest level. Hopefully, with the mental and physical rest for the Lakers side of things, that they can come in sharper against the Grizzlies. To me, the big question will be if the Grizzlies hold serve, which, they earned it. The number 2 seed in the Western Conference. They were able to win with Ja in the lineup, with Ja out of the lineup. They've had continuity over these last several seasons, building a program under Taylor Jenkins. If they hold serve, which they should, how do the Lakers' younger guys approach a game 3 situation? Now, I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but we're getting ahead of ourselves, but you had to look at the scenarios. That's the type of thing that causes me pause in this series. The moment where the Lakers have to come from behind. If they're front running, if they can get one of those first 2 games in Memphis, I really have very little concern for the Lakers. I believe that their confidence and belief will only grow, and LeBron will be able to find a way to step on the Grizzlies' neck. But if they're playing from behind, will that ball get heavier? And we saw in the playing game, I would say, going into this postseason run for the Lakers, who would you say is the 3rd most important player?
I would probably say Reeves.
Okay, Reeves might be the 3rd best. 3rd most important in my mind is D'Angelo Russell. And D'Angelo Russell doesn't get played in the second half basically at all, because he's 1 for 9 in the first half.
That's what I was going to ask you. That's what I'm going to ask you, Dave. Do we need to worry about? I mean, we need to probably worry about D'Angelo Russell and Beasley,
Malik.
The new guys. What's going on with them?
I mean, Vanderbilt, I think he's going to do what he does regardless. His offense will come when there's breakouts, when there's offensive rebounds. Don't worry about that part of his game. Certainly, Malik Beasley is a volume scorer who I spoke to an executive on one of the other teams that he played on prior to getting with the Lakers in the past week, and he said, "Listen, he's going to win the Lakers a playoff game or two. He may lose them a playoff game or two, and that's just who he is. When he's hot, he's hot. When he's not, he's not." As for D'Angelo Russell, I was a little surprised to see him, because he had been geared up and gave some public comments about playing the Wolves, and that was the team he played for before, and he's a guy with a swagger and a cockiness that I just thought he played better than that. So I don't know whether I'm giving him, too much faith in being able to put that behind him and move forward. But, to me, the type of looks that he gets from the Lakers offense, particularly while teams are kind of copying Ty Lue's game plan from the Clippers-Lakers games where they're double teaming Anthony Davis, it's shooting fish in a barrel. He's just got to make the shots. And if he's not making the shots, he needs to make sure he's doing other things to stay on the floor. Because guess what? His backup is not only Darvin Ham's maybe most trusted player of his entire coaching career, but he's a ball hawk defensively in Dennis Schroeder. And he's tough as nails too. He twisted his ankle in the first half of that playing game. No way you're getting him off the court in the second half.
To me, it's going to come down a lot to Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis has to dominate this series. No Steven Adams, no Brandon Clark. Yes, on the other side, there's Jaren Jackson Jr., who could very well win Defensive Player of the Year, and Xavier Tillman behind him, my Michigan State guys. But look, Jaren Jackson Jr. can get in foul trouble. He's, I watched him against Golden State.
It's almost he can't not get in foul trouble.
Yeah,
he's always in foul trouble.
Yeah, I mean, he had a phenomenal game where he exploded against Golden State at Golden State in one of the games. But at the end, it was one of the games where John Morant was out, and at the end, he couldn't hit the shot to kind of like beat Golden State. But yeah, I mean, if Anthony Davis is Anthony Davis, Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to have trouble defending him. You can throw other bodies at him, but that is a game to me where AD has to be established. If they come double AD, so be it. The other Lakers are going to have to make shots, including LeBron. But to me, it comes down to Anthony Davis. If Anthony Davis is Anthony Davis, the way we had seen him, in that big run when LeBron was out, I like the Lakers' chances to get out of the first round.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be 35 points per game, but certainly the aggression that he can play with and the foul line, getting to the foul line to me is such an indicator of where he's at. Are we going to reveal our predictions? I imagine. I know you have a rant to get to. Let's continue to tease the rant and save the rant for later.
Yes.
But let's give our predictions for this series and then move on to what probably going to be a better basketball series in many respects in the Clippers Suns. But predictions for Grizzlies Lakers, you go first.
I predicted Lakers in 7. And yes, that's a tough proposition to win game 7 in Memphis. I still think the Grizzlies, they gotta prove until they prove they can win these games and get that type of experience. I'm going to lean toward LeBron and AD's championship experience. And that's where I kind of have them pulling this out. And I think that AD could be a problem for them. I can see Jaren Jackson Jr. getting into foul trouble. Ja Morant's going to be a problem for the Lakers. And I know Dylan Brooks is going to do everything he can to get under their skin. And of course, I think Luke Kennard's there. LeBron mentioned the other night how Luke Kennard broke his high school record, and he's like a laser.
Right. High school scoring record, yeah.
Yes, high school scoring. So I think Grizzlies have the better team, but I just this time of the year, I tend to trust more superstars like Anthony Davis and LeBron James. What about you?
Yeah, I'm echoing your pick. Lakers in 7, and it maybe it's a cop out, or maybe it's a homer pick. No, really, it's the Lakers are 10-2 over the last 12 games. They've been playing high-level basketball with high stakes for a month and a half. And they're going to have the brain of LeBron to work with the coaching staff to put together a game plan with rested bodies and a ton of motivation. And could the Lakers lose? Sure. That's why you pick it in 7, right? That's, to me, is like the biggest respect factor to the Grizzlies. But am I going to pick against, in that scenario, LeBron James with him sniffing the chance to make another run? I'll go with the Lakers. So now for your Los Angeles Clippers with a practicing or a working out Paul George. Tell me about that before we dive into the series.
Yeah, so we hadn't seen PG in a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden last week, I want to say it was like the last home game, Paul George shows up, no crutches. He just has a magnificent brace at that on his leg. It was one that, the ones with the multiple rings on them, but it just looked nice. It looked comfortable. Didn't look bulky or anything like that.
Okay.
So and then I see him in the
A
locker room.
magnificent break.
Yes,
I mean, first of all, that's maybe the first time in human history that turned.
Yeah, I just used to seeing those bulky braces where
sure.
it looks like you're a robot,
Yeah.
So
okay.
he comes in and he's already gotten the sweat going. He arrived earlier, then he went and worked out. I didn't see him doing any basketball activities on the court. I think he just was doing like cardio. So I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, this is interesting because what I had been told was he needed to have his knee immobilized for 2 to 3 weeks. And here we were approaching week 3, and he had been exercising for a good week. So
Yeah.
I'm like, this is good. This is a good sign. And then he goes on his pod and says that he not only got rid of one crutch, but both of his crutches, and then only had a brace, and that he was working out like crazy. And he said he's up
Yep.
against the gun. And then we see him on the court yesterday getting light shots. He's not jumping to his full extent, but he's still shooting threes. And
Yep.
so I'm like, the last time he did this when he had a shoulder injury, granted the shoulder injury is different than the sprained knee, but the last time we finally started to see him shooting on the court, I think within a couple of weeks he was back. And so that's the thing about this Clipper team is that Kawhi Leonard, like a couple times now, has come out and just mentioned Paul is out. Like whenever he talks about Paul, he says Paul is out. So I think they've convinced themselves that they're not going to have Paul George. But the longer that series goes, Dave, I mean, it's hard not thinking that Paul George is going to try to get out there for a game 6 or game 7.
Okay. So that's certainly interesting and some information we had to take into account when we make our prediction for this series at the end of our discussion. But what's your initial thoughts? Like, obviously, there was the talk as the Clippers were finishing out the season of would they somehow finagle their way into the 6 seeds so they could play the Kings and not the Suns featuring Kevin Durant, the second best player on the planet, in my estimation. So what do you think?
I mean, it was virtually impossible. I know some Clipper fans were like, oh, they should have threw that game. It looked like it was kind of lining up for them at the end there. But, New Orleans and Minnesota, yes, there was a delay in the Clipper game when they had to bring the speakers down from the arena. And that all of a sudden was like, ooh, Clippers might know what's going to happen between the Pelicans and Wolves. But then all of a sudden the games caught up to each other and it was like too close. I think at one point, I got to ask Ty this. I saw on the telecast, Ty Lue leaned back and somebody was telling him something and he went like that. And so I was like, I wonder if he's getting updates on the score. But it was too close for them and too risky for them. They know of all teams that, hey, anything can go wrong in the play-in last year when they lost that first game at Minnesota. And then all of a sudden Paul George had COVID, couldn't play, and they lose to New Orleans. So, I think they're confident amazingly against Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul, because they know like the Suns have only really had 8 games together with Kevin Durant.
But they're 8-0.
Yes, they are 8-0. And Kevin Durant has won like 24 of his last 26 games he's played in this season, something insane like that. But I will say that, and I will say this, Dave, it's been very strange. Normally in the week leading into a playoff series, the players will talk glowingly about the other great player they're going to face, whether it be Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic. This week, though, man, any question you ask them about Kevin Durant, they go really above and beyond. Like I asked Batum, I said, you've had to face Luka Doncic in the playoffs, and he was a mother load to handle. You faced Jokic. I mean, that Doncic wanted to murder the Clippers every time they played each other. Right. You've had to face Jokic. You've faced some great players. Where does Donovan Mitchell? I was like, where's Durant on the defensive assignment level here? And he goes, respect to all of those guys. They're all great players. Kevin Durant's on another level. So, Luka Doncic has dropped monster numbers against them, and they know that Kevin Durant is probably the most difficult assignment they've had in the playoffs. But I asked Ty Lue that. Ty obviously has faced him in the finals and said, is Kevin Durant the most difficult guy you've had to face in the playoffs. And he basically admitted that. But he also, Ty, this is his time of the year, Ty Belichick, he likes to try to figure out strategy. He wants to figure out something to take away from Monty. So it's going to be real interesting. Like, look, this is Russell Westbrook's first playoff series against Kevin Durant. I asked Russ about that in practice yesterday. I said, what's it going to be like for you to face Kevin Durant in a 7-game series? And he looked at me and smiled and said, look, man, there's a lot of people that, he goes, it's normal. There's a lot of people out there that think there's still a lot of beef between us, or there is beef. There is no beef. He's like, I've got nothing respect for KD. There is no beef at all there. He must have mentioned the word beef like 3 times. So it's interesting. I'm going to, head to head, they faced each other 11 times in the regular season. Russ's teams are 6-5 against Kevin Durant, but throw all those numbers out. I mean, this is a whole new thing. And then we're going to get to see Kawhi against KD, which is going to be really fun to watch. Because remember, I think KD got hurt early in that NBA Finals. And so we didn't really get to see that matchup pan out. I would expect Monty to double Kawhi Leonard and try to make Russ and everybody else shoot from the outside and beat them. But the one thing I would say, Dave, the Clippers had trouble all season long trying to defend young athletic teams and guards who attack and are relentless getting to the rim. They couldn't stop penetration. As good as the Phoenix Suns are, this is really a jump shooting team. Now, an all-time elite jump shooting team with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, but at least they have a chance to try to defend those shots. And so I think this could, I picked the Clippers to lose this series in 7 games, not knowing where Paul George was going to be. If Paul George were healthy, I might have leaned toward picking the Clippers to get out of this.
Well, so remember the old Akeem Olajuwon, Shaquille O'Neal Taco Bell commercials?
Yes. Wait. Remind me about that.
So it was after the 95 finals. Obviously, the Rockets take care of the Magic. 4-game sweep, right? And then Taco Bell had Akeem and Shaq in commercials together, riding a tandem bicycle, et cetera, et cetera. So they are these foes of one another coming together. So what I'm getting at in a very long-winded preamble is Russell Westbrook, no beef, him and KD, beyond meat. They're setting themselves up for commercial this offseason. Beyond meat, Russ and KD, baby, no beef.
This is where our age difference is, Dave. I would go back even further to the Wendy's commercial where it's, where's the beef?
No, but it's where you're missing no beef. There's no beef. So you can't do it. You can't do it for
where's
Wendy's.
The beef works? Where's the beef work? Where's the beef?
Well, but then you're advertising a burger place, Beyond Meat. You're advertising for the vegan. I digress.
Yeah.
Who's going to guard KD on the Clippers side?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, you can't put Kawhi on him from the get-go because that's just going to wear Kawhi out. And obviously there's the height difference there too. But Kawhi, I got to tell you, man, when he sticks his big hand in front of someone to challenge, it doesn't even need to be like close to blocking that shot. I've watched this all season. It almost always affects the jump shooter. Yeah. His hand is so big that more often than not, that guy's missing that jump shot. It's crazy. But Kevin Durant is a whole nother monster. I would think that they're going to throw waves and waves at him, starting with Nicholas Batum. That's the one thing about their depth. They do have a lot of wings that they can throw at Kevin Durant.
Maybe some Covington time this series, you think?
Maybe. I think they will try to get physical with him. I think if I'm Ty Lue and if I'm the Clippers, I'm actually going to take my chances with Devin Booker and Chris Paul. Look, Chris Paul the other day hit a huge amount of
7 threes, 7 threes, and he says he's working on playing off the ball as much as he's ever worked at that in his career.
Yeah, I'll still take my chances with Chris Paul. Funnel him into the paint, let him go for his patented little runner that he likes to do, or drawing the fouls. And Devin Booker, as great as he is, you can get physical with him. They've done that before in the Western Conference Finals. Try to frustrate him, and then on the other end, attack Chris Paul, attack Devin Booker. And you also have to make KD work. So a lot of it is going to be on Kawhi's shoulders because he's got to make them work on the other end, even if he gets double teamed. Norm Powell is going to have to be very aggressive. Russell Westbrook's going to have to be aggressive getting to the rim. Zubac is going to have to be huge. He cannot lose his matchup against DeAndre Ayton. If he does, then it's going to be big trouble for them. Plumlee and Zoo have to keep DeAndre Ayton in check off the glass too, especially. And then it comes down to depth. The Clippers have to win the second unit minutes. The bench minutes, they must win that. I mean, to me, because the Suns' depth is kind of in question here. You know, we got to see how good they can be when some of the stars rest. And I know Monty's going to stagger his guys out, but they absolutely have to win those second unit minutes. What do you think, Dave? What's your prediction?
I'm going Suns, and as much respect I have for Ty Belichick, and certainly, I mean, Kawhi looked so good against the Lakers that late season game. I got, you know, I don't know how many times I've complained on this podcast for the way that Kawhi managed his minutes this year, starting coming off the bench, no back-to-backs, et cetera, et cetera. The goal in mind was to look like that player headed into the postseason. So, I mean, Kawhi Leonard, he will be causing Monty Williams and Kevin Young and the rest of that Suns coaching staff to lose sleep this weekend headed into the playoffs. But yeah, I'm going to go Suns, and I'd be surprised if it would go 7. You know, I could see them closing it out in LA in game 6. So I'll take Suns in 6. But you know, the PG factor, certainly, like, you know, this is like the opposite of what we saw Zion doing. Like, I think we're going to get PG if he's anywhere straddling the line, yes or no. I don't think we're going to have to wait till he says, I feel like PG before he can play. He's going to play. And that could help this team, because Paul George is so gifted offensively, where I think he could cater his game. Say he's only at 70% physically. His skill level is so high. I think he could find a way to be a highly effective player. And so if that's the case, hey, maybe it does get extended to 7, and then 7 is a coin flip. But the Suns, Kevin Durant is a problem right now. I watched him warm up. You know, obviously it was a more intense workout because he was not playing against the Lakers that night. But I was slackjaw watching him at Crypto.com Arena that Friday night game when the Suns played most of their subs against the Lakers. He was going full speed. And, you know, it's one dribble pull up, swish, and it does set like 6 times in a row till he makes 5 or whatever, goes to the next spot. Then it's you know, pass to the coach and fade to the corner, catch in the smallest of space with his size 20 sneakers, barely straddling the line, swish. Like, the guy's unbelievable. His skill level is, I mean, we've never seen any player like it. He shot 61% on 2-point shots this year. Mid-range shots. I mean, he's a master.
The thing is, like, he's like a machine. Him and Kawhi, when I watched them work out, and I got to watch a lot of Kevin Durant workouts when I was covering the Brooklyn Nets last year for a little bit. They both work that mid-range. They're like machines. I mean, they know their spots where they get to it, and there's like not even a hitch in their footwork, in their shot form, everything. It's just like they work and work and work on those same spots over and over and over again. And in many ways, it's gonna be so much fun to watch, because they're gonna work the mid-range to death, both of them, unless they're double teamed like crazy. So, but Kevin Durant, that's the thing, at 7 foot, it's just so hard to block that shot. It's so hard to defend it, you know? It's almost automatic. Dave, I haven't forgotten about my little my playoff prediction rant. Please. So here's the thing, okay? And I understand how much fans love their teams. But what I don't understand is why fans think that we are fans of the teams that we cover, okay? And so when I make a prediction, it's like, what? How could you pick against the Clippers? What? Like, no, hold on. Let me read some of the tweets here.
Oh, please.
Ken Stunton. What kind of reporter doesn't believe in their team? I mean, I'm not responding to these people. Well, I guess I'm responding to them now on our show. But basically, like, these people just like, well, how could you go against the Clippers? You cover them. Because I cover them does not mean that I am being paid by the team. I am not on their payroll. I am not a fan, nor have I grown up a fan of the LA Clippers. Do I have a working relationship with them? Am I around the players all the time? Do I like being around them? Do I like being around people in the Clippers? Absolutely. I have no animosity toward the Clippers, but at the same time, I'm not a fan. You know what I mean? And then it's like, if you pick against anybody else, like I think all of us at ESPN picked the Miami Heat to beat the Atlanta Hawks in the play-in. Oh, everybody's got receipts now. Look, everybody from ESPN got this wrong, blah, blah, blah. What about when we get it right? Does anybody point that out? No. You know, I mean, it's like, come on, this is what predictions are. You know what I mean? I just like, but the one that gets me all the time is the ones like, you covered the Clippers. How could you pick against them? I mean, I call it like I see it.
I think next time we do this, we got to get REM ready. Everybody Hurts playing in the background. I need you to pick the most vicious, ridiculous, low blow shot of a tweet and read it in deadpan fashion. And I think we're really going to, we found something here.
We need to do that mean tweets. That's what we need to do. Right. We need to do one whole session on mean tweets. I'm sure you get it a lot, Dave, all the time. So,
well, you know what, though? I would say, though, the art of the prediction, on some level, got to give credit to Mark Spears. This past summer, he put 10 toes down in the city of Sacramento and said, they're gonna break the playoff streak of missing it 16 straight years, and he was right, and he is reaping the benefits there. But yeah, I think fans attach themselves to negativity for some reason, and we become a proxy for negativity. So that's all it is, man. You got to understand the psychology of it.
I grew up loving the Washington football team and the Chicago Bulls, and before I even got into this business, I never ever thought like, what's wrong with Michael Wilbon and David Aldridge? Why don't they like Washington football? Why don't they vote? Why aren't they predicting them to win?
Yeah.
What's wrong with Tony Kornheiser? I never thought like that. So I don't know. Maybe I'm the only thing I'm a fan left of is Michigan State, because now when I cover sports, you kind of have to be objective, and you lose the fan in you when you cover certain sports or teams. But Michigan State, I can still remain a fan of.
Yeah, the same thing with Syracuse basketball for me.
Yeah, but I don't expect the Michigan State beat to be like, rooting for Michigan State or picking them all the time. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. That's just me. Anyways, rant over. Dave, what have you thought of the play-in so far going into Friday's games?
So here's what I like about it. One, the original play-in format was introduced in the bubble, right? Because only 22 out of 30 teams were invited down to Orlando, and the regular season didn't get to come to its natural finale. I think most teams have played 71 or 72 games. So the league invited 6 other teams beyond the teams that would have been slotted into playoff spots. Partially, I think, because one of those teams in that 6-team pool was the Pelicans with Zion Williamson. The league very much, is hopes someday can fulfill the promise of what he showed at Duke. But the rule was you had to be 3.5 games behind?
Yeah,
3 or 3.5 games behind. Now, this year, the standings were so jumbled that it's okay. All the teams that made the play-in would have qualified for that. But the league has lifted that as a stipulation. I don't like it. That should be reinserted, okay? So long as that's reinserted, I'm totally behind the play-in because of this. One, we're getting good basketball this week as an appetizer for the playoffs that really matter. 2, the teams that are 9 and 10, while yes, you're putting a little bit more stress on the teams that are 7 and 8, they really have an uphill battle, man. Like, you play your first game on Wednesday, then you play your second game on Friday, Wednesday on the road, Friday on the road. That's an uphill battle to climb, right? And if you can do it, so be it, right? But I like it because it's really a tall task for a team to pull it off. And, if they do, good for them. We keep it moving. But I don't think we're going to see regularity teams coming out of the 10 spot to make the first round, which when it does happen, that team probably has something to them. If this OKC team beats the Wolves, we'll probably look back at their play-in run a couple of years from now and be like, oh yeah, they're a conference finalist this year. Of course, we saw when they're the 10 seed in the Western Conference play-in. So I like it overall. Again, throw in the qualifier because last year I believe there was a gap more than 3 games for one of the teams that ended up making it. I'm all behind it if they could do that again.
I mean, shout out to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who also took notice of all the prognosticators and people not really picking them. I mean, I'm one of them that just thought Oklahoma City, once Chet Holmgren was out, I was like, okay, they should just make a run at Wembanyama. Why not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But they actually went for it. They played hard. They stuck with it. They're a good team, man. They're like, I was wondering last night, God, I just want to see Chet Holmgren with this group and see what it can be like with them, with all that length on the floor. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's a monster, man. He is an absolute monster. I got to say, like the play-in, we haven't seen one of the play-in teams come out of the first round yet. And so if the Lakers do it, I think they're going to be the first play-in team to win a round in the playoffs if they can do it, or anybody else. I mean, the Atlanta Hawks, I was shocked the other night. Like, I thought Miami kind of like, I guess I believe too much in the Miami culture and Spo and Jimmy Butler, but man, they got waxed on the glass. They couldn't grab a single rebound. The Hawks have a lot of height. They got a lot of prospects with first round pedigree. Trae Young didn't even really have to take over that game. And that was another thing. There's so much smoke that has been following Trae Young all season that I just kind of bought into the narrative that I was like, I don't know, man. Hawks have been up and down, up and down. I'm going to go with Miami culture. And Hawks look good. They look great the other night. So
yeah, man, I covered the Heat waxed the Hawks last year in the playoffs in the first round. And so I was one of the 15 ESPN analysts to pick the Heat with full confidence and credit. Quinn Snyder's a heck of a coach, and so the players get it done on the court. But I do believe that's Quinn Snyder showing his impact already. But hey, I think we're pro playing, right? Like we're pro playing.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I think it's anytime you have a one and done scenario, win or lose, I think it makes for great theater and great basketball. So I'm all for that. Dave, what did you think? You got the aftermath of the Minnesota Timberwolves after Rudy Gobert and Kyle Anderson got into it on the bench. Have you ever seen anything like that at a game or a team that you covered where teammates got into a fight like that on the bench?
No, nothing physical. I've seen LeBron James and Tristan Thompson jaw at one another. I've seen LeBron jaw at Kyrie Irving and with Kyrie not making eye contact, having 1,000-yard stare. I've seen LeBron James and Phil Handy, the assistant coach, get into it. I wasn't covering the Heat at the time.
You've seen LeBron and JR.
LeBron and JR, of course, at the end of that game 1 of the finals in 2018, the basketball world saw LeBron James give a bit of a shoulder bump to Eric Spoelstra his first year in Miami. That level of discontent is somewhat common in high-level pro hoops. Cooler heads generally prevail. But to see somebody wind up and throw a punch, now he hit him in the shoulder. It wasn't like in the face. I'm not trying to take this to another level than it actually was, but that's extreme. And I understand after the fact, Kyle Anderson and Rudy Gobert both said that they've made amends with one another and they can move forward as teammates. But Minnesota Timberwolves, as Chris Finch said before the game against the Lakers, like we have to have non-negotiables as an organization. And one of them is going to be if one of our players punches another player, there's got to be a suspension.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought that Minnesota would miss Pat Bev in the locker room and his leadership as much as they did? I mean, Pat Bev was like a perfect fit for them last year. They kind of needed that guy, that veteran experience. And then, look, Rudy Gobert, I mean, everybody's been kind of knocking that trade. Rudy Gobert has to be better than that. And I'm sure he feels that way. And so we'll see what happens with Minnesota. I don't think I've ever covered anything like that. I've covered teams where they went at each other off the court in practice. There was a famous time when Alonzo Mourning and Kenyon Martin and Richard Jefferson got into it all over running suicides where, RJ and Kenyon were mocking Alonzo Mourning post kidney surgery for not really being able to do well in those suicides. And of course, Alonzo Mourning, Mr. Intensity, was not going to have
that.
So,
Yeah.
and I've seen Kenyon Martin and Keith Van Horn, have some icy glares, and then Kenyon Martin killing Keith Van Horn in the media afterwards, which led to his trade, but nothing like this. So it'll be real interesting to see how Minnesota if they can survive something like that. Look,
the fact that one more on that though. The fact of the matter is, it's all about the eyeballs, right? This is the same reason why the Draymond punch against Jordan Poole ended up reverberating so much throughout the sport, and quite frankly, beyond just the sport. People were talking about the NBA who are not even sports fans because the video emerges of him punching his teammate. And then you really have an issue on your hands. It's teams' instincts to keep stuff in-house. If Rudy Gobert did that at shoot around with no reporter around, he's not getting suspended. Come on, man. It's just not the way things go. And so on some level, Rudy has to understand that as well, that, you ultimately are responsible for your actions, even if, as Adrian Wojnarowski reported, Kyle Anderson used the trigger word, the same word that Draymond Green apparently used when LeBron stepped over him in the 2016 finals. That word's not one guys like to hear in this league, and so you're almost going to get what's coming to you, but you're crossing the line when you're making it physical.
Well, that's a great point, because there's context to everything, right? And so in the Clipper game on the same day, Plumlee and Bones Highland get into it on the bench, but that one was over a defensive breakdown. And so they exchanged words, but it was more of like, hey, I told you to go out there and challenge that shot at Terrence Ross, and you didn't fight through that screen, or maybe the other guy's being like, you told me too late, what's going on here? You need to tell me quicker. And so they get into it. And of course, there's a shoving match a little bit. Teammates get involved there right before the start of the fourth quarter, but Ty Lue kept both of them on the court, and they helped the Clippers make that run. And that eventually helped them beat the Suns in Phoenix on the last day. So I think it all is about context when you see these guys and what it's over and things like that. And certainly the Gobert Anderson thing definitely had more to that than, say, Plumlee Bones Highland. So I also want to ask you about in the play-in, what did you think of the other night in Toronto? Did you hear DeMar DeRozan's daughter shrieking at the Toronto Raptors when they were at the line?
Oh, yes, I did. What a shriek. What a great daughter who ride or dies for her father. Like, that is cool. DeMar afterwards said that, hey, my daughter said she wanted to come to the game. Obviously, knowing the background that DeMar played for the Raptors for years, to have that primetime seat below the basket, and you're going to do whatever you can to help your team. Now, I will now turn the page from that feedback and say, anyone who is suggesting that the Raptors shooting 50% from the foul line had anything to do with DeMar DeRozan's daughter are out of their minds. It's the same thing at the Arena back in the day. The fans had their little, spinny eye. What do you even call that? Help me out here. You know what I'm talking about?
The little spinny thing. It's like
the spinny thing.
Yes.
Optical illusion.
Yes,
and the fans thought anytime an opposing player missed a free throw, it was because of them. No. Your damn thunder sticks? No, it does nothing. These professional basketball players.
What about Mr. Whammy in Brooklyn?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mr. Whammy's doing a whole lot of help for the Nets by waving his hands and throwing bad juju at the player. It's inconsequential. And quite frankly, I saw.
But this is a home team. To be fair, Dave, this is a home team shooting free throws when technically they are not dealing with any of those things, right? They're not used to deal. If you're on the road, that's one thing. Absolutely. You're going to deal with all of those distractions. But this is at home. You're not expecting this like somebody is being murdered or being put in the torture chamber shriek right before you. And she was timing it right before you release it.
I mean, listen, to me, all I'm hearing is that you are saying that the Raptors are mentally weak. So if that's the takeaway here, that those guys aren't professional enough to zero in on making the easiest shot in basketball, unguarded 15 feet away from the basket with 10 seconds to gather yourself and shoot, then they deserve to miss. And quite frankly, if you're having a preteen can determine the fate of your season. Like, come on, Give me a break. Give
Well,
me a freaking break.
I do think they've been very up and down all season long, certainly. But when you are missing those type of free throws in crunch time in the biggest game of the season, yeah, I mean there's absolutely a mental weakness there. Absolutely. I mean, I think at that point, anything they went 18 for 36 from the line, Dave. 18 for 36. Pascal Siakam 5 for 11. As great of a game as he had, 32, 9, and 6, but he went 5-11 from the free throw line. Scotty Barnes 4 for 7. Fred VanVleet 3 for 6. Fred VanVleet.
And it's because of DeMar's daughter, you're saying?
I'm not saying it's all because of DeMar's daughter, but I understand
it's not because of DeMar's daughter.
Oh, I do think it might have played a part. Do you think it might have played a part?
If any of those players ever admit that, they should retire that same day.
They'll never admit that.
Turn in my jersey. Here's my playbook. I'm done. Let me collect my NBA pension. I just fell flat on my face because of a preteen girl during a playing game.
I mean, how about
a one or done scenario?
DeMar's daughter goes into Toronto and out fans Drake and the Toronto Raptors super fan who's been there since the beginning. Okay,
there we go.
Give her absolutely a lot of props. So Dave, you ready for the playoffs? Are we ready to get this going?
I cannot wait. Hitting the road from Memphis for the Lakers have an extended time between games 1 and game 2. They play game 1 Sunday, game 2 Wednesday, and I got to go on Friday because the team thinks it's a great idea to get to Memphis an extra day early to get into practice on Saturday and also, I guess, adjust their body clocks to Central Time Zone. So I got to get my butt on a plane on Friday for a Sunday game and not come back to Los Angeles until Thursday. You got easy 1 hour flight to Phoenix.
Oh, but Clippers are practicing in Phoenix on Saturday before their Sunday game. But how about this? I believe the schedule gods have the Clippers and the Lakers playing at Crypto on the same day on Saturday.
That's right.
But the Clippers will be done with game 4 before the Lakers even start game 3, Dave.
Yeah, that's wild. Well, we shall see how it goes.
Which means the Lakers are going to have to catch up, right? Because obviously they're not going to play each other in the next round, but all these.
So remind me, Clippers games. The Clippers schedule is
Clippers play Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday to start, and then I think they'll have maybe a couple day break after that. So
Sunday, Thursday, Tuesday, Saturday. So yeah, I guess we'll probably be talking Friday.
Friday, yeah,
Friday.
We'll talk Friday before the big doubleheader.
All right, we will be in playoff mode fully then. I cannot wait for it. You're gonna have to tell me about the Bianco pizza you had in Phoenix.
Yes.
I'll have some Gus's fried chicken in Memphis. And for all y'all tuning in, treat the game well. It'll treat you well. That's it for this week's edition of That's OD. The playoffs are upon us. Let's go.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.